We are back again, and we are continuing the program with a very, very interesting panel conversation. We have the honor and the privilege to host the ambassadors from regional countries. The title of the panel is Empowering Energy Security and Transition, Insights from U.S. on Energy Policy and Investments. With us is the ambassador, U.S. Ambassador in Greece, Mr. George Tsounis, Mrs. Angela Aguilar, Ambassador of U.S. Embassy in North Macedonia, Mr. Christopher Hill, Ambassador of U.S. Embassy in Serbia, Mrs. Julie D. Fisher, Ambassador of U.S. Embassy in Cyprus, and Mrs. Mary Eileen David, Mission Director of USAID Kosovo. Co-moderator of this panel is the Chair of the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Nicholas Bakatselos. I would kindly ask all the panelists to join us here. Mr. Hill, maybe you want to take a photo with the rest of the ambassadors since, but anyway, we will take a photo afterwards. Here, yeah, we will take a photo afterwards. Yep. Sure.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back from lunch. It's always tough to get the crowd back, but we have a star panel here. So I'd like to welcome you to this discussion on empowering energy security and transition, insights from the U.S. on energy policy and investment. Today, we have with us an esteemed group of U.S. ambassadors and representatives who are at the forefront of energy policy and international cooperation. So we have with us Mr. George Tsounis, Ambassador of the U.S. to Greece. Welcome, Ambassador. Ambassador Angela Aguilar, Ambassador of the U.S. to North Macedonia. Welcome, Ambassador. It's great to have you with us. Ambassador Hill, Ambassador of the U.S. to Serbia. Welcome back, Ambassador. And Ambassador Julie Fisher, Ambassador of the U.S. to Cyprus, and, of course, Mary Eileen David, Mission Director of USAID in Kosovo. Welcome, welcome. So your insights are crucial as we navigate the complex landscape of energy security and the ongoing transition towards greener energy solutions. I thank you all on behalf of AmCham and myself personally for being here with us. It's an honor. So I've compiled a few questions that I'd like to start and ask each and every one of you. So my first question is, in light of recent developments in the Middle East and the ongoing war in Ukraine, what are your views on the trajectory of Europe's energy efficiency and independence? If the geopolitical situation worsens, how do you believe the U.S. should respond? So, Ambassador Tsounis, could we start with you, please?
Well, let's start with the premise that energy security is national security, and it is in everyone's best interest that their energy, from everything from keeping the lights on and the heat on and operating rooms functioning, that they have a reliable energy source. I think Europe has made a series of mistakes over decades where They relied on a sole provider for energy and a provider that ultimately used it for extortive purposes. We've learned that lesson well, and there is infrastructure that's being put in place so each country can manage their energy security, which again is national security. This is a transition, though, because the priorities here are not only energy security, but it's decarbonization, it's transitioning, it's providing multiple energy sources. My good friend, the Bulgarian energy minister, is here, and we work very, very closely. Ian, the TSO CEO from Romania, is also here. I spent a lot of time with Ian because they are essential in building the vertical corridor, which is Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. Each country brings something to the table, but fundamentally, it is in everyone's best interest that they cooperate on this to provide alternatives, the transition, and to decarbonize. Now, the war in Ukraine and the challenges that we have in Gaza have the potential to signal to oil traders that we can have a spike in pricing. That provides a lot of challenge because it disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable in our society. Those challenges, combined with supply chain challenges, the fact that goods and services that go on ships, which is 90% of the global economy, can have to go around the Horn of Africa, which adds 10 days and tremendous costs, augments what is already an inflationary environment. So we're hitting the most vulnerable at the supermarket and at the gas pump and, electricity. You had a situation in Europe over the last couple of years where the average homeowner who was spending 150 euros a month for electricity, that went up sixfold. Think of a family that had to go from 150 euros to 900 euros. That's a challenge. So, we have to come up with a comprehensive plan that addresses energy security, but also keeping cost low. Now, that's a transition. One of the challenges came from the earthquake in Japan, where they did away with nuclear. Germany did the same thing. It provided the war in Ukraine. It took a year to de-link electricity prices from LNG as they shot up multiple fold. They were 7 times what they were in the U.S. So I think we have to be more agile. We have to be quicker about it because it's not only a national security issue. It's not only deleveraging Gazprom and getting Russia off of Europe's neck because they are using it to destabilize governments in the region, but it's also essential in economics. You're not going to have data centers or manufacturing if you can't provide reliable and affordable electricity.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Aguilar?
Thank you. What a great question, and thank you for including me, and it's a delight to be here. Thank you. And I want to thank you also specifically for the partnership that we have seen over the course of the past couple of years between AmCham here and AmCham in North Macedonia. I think we see that through these sorts of partnerships in business and particularly in energy, that this is where the collaboration that is so critical comes. As Ambassador Sunas said, the energy security is national security. And I was struck by our conversation we had earlier today about the global implications of security on all of us, and really the urgency of, the current imperative and the current opportunities for this. The greatest example on which my friend, the Minister for Energy, is here with us today, and delighted by the work that we have been able to do together, and Ambassador Sunas and I talking about the interconnector. It's just one example of one of those opportunities that we have within the region that will have a significant impact not only on the energy security of the Balkans, but throughout Europe. And these are the types of opportunities that, quite frankly, I don't think we can afford to lose. And so I look forward to continuing that conversation, and I believe that those sorts of conversations not only make us all more secure, but also make us more prosperous and independent.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning the AmCham of North Macedonia. We're great friends, and I think, as you said, this shows the trajectory of how things could go in the future. Absolutely. Ambassador Hill, it's over to you now, please.
Well, thank you very much, and let me join others in saying what a pleasure it is to be back here at this great forum, which I remember when I was here 2 years ago, and we felt we were dealing on a kind of precipice of a lot of different issues soon to happen. But I think what has happened in Ukraine and the fact that this has turned into a long war should remind us all of the point that the two previous panelists have already made, which is energy policy is national security policy. What has happened in Ukraine is, I think, a wake-up call for us all, whether in just raw security policy, but also food and certainly energy as well. So with respect to Serbia, Serbia made some fateful mistakes early on. First of all, there's been an underinvestment in energy, a over-reliance on coal, and then, of course, the decision that was made some years ago, by the way, before the current government, because a lot of things in Serbia are just completely politicized. This was even before the current government, the decision to sell to Russia the main oil refinery. So these are issues that need to be addressed and need to be addressed with some urgency. Serbia's need for natural gas the natural gas supply has been 100% from Russia. And with coal, of their total energy needs being 44%, of their total electricity needs, coal being some 33%, it's time to phase out coal. And so Serbia has a massive job ahead of it, but I'm pleased to say that good things are happening. First of all, I have been very much a believer in the need for much greater regional cooperation, and show me energy policy and I'll show you regional cooperation. And we are already seeing that. This Bulgarian connector is going to play a major role as Serbia looks for additional or diverse supplies of natural gas. There are ongoing talks with Romania that could bring some natural gas developed in Romania into Serbia. These are major changes. We estimate in the next 3 to 5 years, if Serbia wants to buy Russian natural gas, it will be a function of the price of it, not a function of being desperate for it. So I think we're going to see a big change. In addition, the issue of renewables. You know, for many people, they looked at renewables and just thought this is some pipe dream for the future. Actually, the change in energy prices, the change in the improvement in technology makes renewables really quite an important element of any energy mix. There are ongoing and talks are probably about finishing up now in Serbia with an American producer of solar power, and that's going to add a gigawatt to the entire system. There's also talks of advanced talks really about working with Romania on more hydropower, this time in the form of pump storage. I think the most important thing about our energy future is to understand that it's never going to be just one thing. There are a lot of technologies that are competing with each other and may coexist with each other in the long run. But I think it's very clear to all of us that we all have stories to tell. For example, in the U.S. right now, You can have most electric companies divided by the states, so there are 50 electric companies, probably more. They have this, you buy solar panels for your house. You can use it for your house. If you produce more, it goes back to the electricity company, and you get a credit. Well, that is going on in a lot of different places, and so we all have to share our experiences. But I do hope, in Serbia's case, there's one other element of all this, which is a country that has had its issues in the past, continues to have its issues, but increasingly is pointing westward, and a big part of that reason is for the cooperation in energy supplies and the need to address those and solve them in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hill. I think you touched upon two things that I'd like to dig in deeper later on: renewables and lessons learned from the U.S. that could apply to the region. Thank you, Ambassador Fisher.
There we go. Better? Okay. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be with my colleagues on this panel and to talk about this subject. And in particular to do it with AmCham, which has just been such an important partner for me. Every place I've ever served since becoming a diplomat in the 90s, AmCham has been there and has been an absolutely essential partner for helping us navigate relationships together to the benefit of American companies, American affiliated companies. So this is perfect. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words.
Yes, yes. So, look, the premise of your question was sort of, what if it gets worse? Well, you know, here we are 2.5 years into Russia's incredibly brutal war against Ukraine. It is worse. It's not what if it gets worse. It is worse. And so what are we going to do? We're going to keep at what we have been trying to do since the United States of America started warning about this war, right? And that involves, as my colleagues have said, right, it involves ensuring that we recognize what the Kremlin's playbook is, looking at how the Kremlin has weaponized energy or depriving countries of energy resources. And so it means doing more, first and foremost, in renewables. We all know that, we all understand that. But it also means that as we look at various energy projects and we look at what is going on, and I will speak specifically to the Cyprus case here, that these projects are not simply local projects or national projects, particularly when we're talking about member states of the European Union or NATO allies, for example, right, the transatlantic family. We have to be thinking much bigger about how it is that we counter the Kremlin in these ways. And so, you know, for us, I think we see that this high global demand for natural gas has empowered and enriched Russia, right, and actors like Russia. So there is an urgency, an absolute urgency for Western nations that possess these resources to get them to market as soon as possible. So progress on renewables and natural gas together is overdue. And now is the time to make economically viable choices that will enhance, in the case of the country where I am working, that will enhance Cyprus's energy security and that of the Eastern Mediterranean and Europe for decades to come. And now is the time for Cyprus to emerge from some of those past patterns that have prevented overdue progress. American companies that are in this sector have made their commitments clear with long-term investments that will power the Eastern Med for generations. This includes not only financial investments, but also the sharing of expertise and experience, ensuring the region is equipped with the infrastructure and technology to meet future energy demand sustainably and to be able to counter that pressure coming from the Kremlin. In return, I say to the president of AmCham, but I will say that in return, I believe American companies rely on genuine, sustained partnership with host governments that are built on trust, transparency, and tenacity when it comes to achieving goals together. Our biggest companies provide unwavering stability and predictability, and they are looking for the same thing in return. In the Eastern Med, U.S. partnerships are driving the development of traditional energy resources and the shift toward low-carbon economies, aligning with global climate goals and enhancing the role in the global energy market. And so with Cyprus in that key position that it's always been in, at the crossroads of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, and with the transatlantic shift away from Russian energy, cutting off that financing for Russia's brutal war in Ukraine, Cyprus is poised to play an essential role in promoting this energy security and the energy transition if it makes the choice to do so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. David?
Let me also add my thanks to you for having me here today and to be able to join such an esteemed panel and to be here in Greece, who is a good partner with USAID in Kosovo and Kosovo as well. So thank you so much. One of the ways that the U.S. has responded is through USAID in launching the U.S.-Europe Energy Bridge as a way to bring together European and Eurasian energy sector stakeholders, namely the Western Balkans, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, with financing and technological and operational expertise necessary to address significant critical infrastructure investments and management needs. The Energy Bridge, through bilateral and regional projects, acts as a counterbalance to the efforts of malign influence in the region and builds on decades of USAID's efforts to improve regional energy security while advancing U.S. national security, commercial interests, and aiming to empower our allies to break free from the energy and financial dependence of other sources. So support for this initiative is focused on three main pillars: structuring energy markets to align with the common European model and increasing trade with Europe and allied countries, diversifying energy resources and enabling investment, as I mentioned, and strengthening energy and critical infrastructure resilience to respond to emergencies.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think all of you spoke of regional cooperation and the importance that energy could play in this opening up cooperation between countries. So I'd like to move slightly away from that and perhaps talk about something that we've all felt, particularly this summer, climate change. So with the world facing unprecedented climate challenges, how well do you think the countries you represent are responding to these issues? What steps, including new energy and environmental policies, will be most effective in achieving significantly reduced or net zero emissions? And how is the US contributing to these efforts? Climate change remains the most critical challenge, I think, of our time. And I would appreciate if you could discuss how the countries you represent are addressing these challenges and the role that the US is playing.
Thank you, Nico. Climate change may be the most significant challenge we're going to face. If we're going to limit the temperature of the world from climbing at no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, we're going to have to make $30 trillion worth of investments over the next 7 years. That's an average of $4.5 billion a year. We're currently making $1.8 trillion a year. So we have a ways to go, but it is achievable. Now, let me give you the reality of it. The money exists in the United States and in Europe, particularly in Northern Europe, but they're 22% of the global population. We're also going to have to figure out how we bridge the gap in investments in sub-Saharan Africa, in some of the truly most vulnerable countries in Indo-Pacific. India and China are $1.4 billion each, and they're significant coal burners. So we're going to have to figure out a way to help everyone expedite the transition, because it is a transition. We can't just snap our fingers and say we're all going to be carbon neutral. There are consequences when you do this transition that we're going to have to ameliorate. There are millions of people that work in these industries in the United States. You look at Kozani, over this particular decade, as Greece is coming out of the lignite business, there'll be 50,000 people in that region that work in that industry. We're going to have to figure out, so we can avoid an economic cataclysm, how to retrain everyone that works in the lignite industry and put them to work. That's very important because there's a human consequence here as well. So we have to have a very comprehensive plan in how we decarbonize. Now, when I say a transition, I think the challenge is, I would like, and I have a dream that everything would be a renewable. But we still need something, and this is the most important phrase I'm going to say today, base load. Even in Greece, where you have over 300 days of sunshine, the sun doesn't always shine. Now, last year, Greece had 57% of its electricity come from renewables. Number 3 in Europe, top 10 in the world. By 2028, it will be 80%. It will be a net exporter. We're working on, with Cyprus, the Great Sea Interconnector. There are proposals going forward to interconnect Egypt, Africa, with Greece. Greece is interconnecting its islands. DEFSA is working with Bulgaria to take the Greek-Bulgarian interconnector from 3 gigawatts to 4.5 gigawatts and expanding the second one. And we have to figure out a way to do the Greek-North Macedonian interconnector. If we don't, and this is the insanity of it, right now, it is Russian lignite. To have this interconnector, it will reduce carbon by 60 to 65%. It will reduce nitrogen by 80 to 85%. We cannot let the enemy of the perfect be the substantial improvement as we transition. But one of the challenges to this $30 billion price tag is going to be, how do we get the entirety of the world investing, changing habits and investing, and doing so as quickly as possible? Because, folks, my father taught me about the ancient Greek art of rhetoric, ethos, logos, pathos. But, there's intrinsic scientific data. Climate crisis is real. It may be the greatest existential threat to our planet. It is creating food scarcity. It doesn't rain a lot in a lot of places. I mean, Greece is starting to grow mangoes. It's becoming a tropical environment. It did not snow this year. These are long-term challenges, but it seems that the 100-year storm is happening every 18 months. And we've seen the devastating impacts, not just in Greece. 48% of the forest around Alexandroupoli burned last year. We saw the floods in Thessaly. We saw the devastating fires in the Athens suburbs this year. And I'm grateful to my friends at USAID, who last year provided $100,000 to the Hellenic Red Cross, and this year $140,000 to ease human suffering, as there is a human cost, to this as well. But, you have forests that are burning, not just in Greece, but everywhere. Last year, one of the wealthiest places in the world, in Maui, people died. And this crisis has to be addressed. We cannot put our head in the sand and pretend it is going to go away. So in addition to the investments, we have to change habits. So U.S. technology usually leads the way. But we're going to have to, in Greece, for instance, as Greece is a tremendous investor in renewables. There's 120 gigawatts of approved renewable projects that are approved in Greece, more than the electrical grid can handle. We need to expand the electrical grid. High tension to Italy, and storage, batteries. Now, these are tremendous economic opportunities that will create jobs. So let's come up with a plan that in a place like Kozani, or in a place like West Virginia, or a place like Eastern Kentucky, we can transition how we heat our houses, but do so with respect to working people who are in these industries, and that's how they put food on the table. We need to do both, and we need to do both with a sense of urgency.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Aguilar, what's the situation in North Macedonia?
Well, let me begin by saying that I just got back last week from a family vacation to Alaska. So I love this question. I've never been there before. You all know it's notoriously cold and covered in snow. Not as much, I'm very sorry to say. A speedboat captain took us out to a glacier that had lost 3 miles in the last 2 years. It was startling to take a helicopter ride over some of the tallest mountains in the United States with no snow on them. As I was leaving Skopje for this very wonderful holiday, huge swaths, kilometers and kilometers of North Macedonia were on fire, as you know, because they were mirrored right here in Greece. And the devastation that we have seen simply cannot be denied. But the very critical point here, I think, is what Ambassador Sunis said, is while it is undeniable, it is also not an automatic fix. And while we can recognize, again, the imperative of clean energy, it isn't as though we can flip that switch and immediately move to clean energy. If we could, that would be fabulous. And if any of you have that idea, let us know and we'll get on it. But it is something that takes time, and we have clearly seen that in North Macedonia, where Ambassador Sunis and I advocated for quite a long time for the interconnector, which is for carbon-based LNG, but is a heck of a lot cleaner than lignite. And so it is something that in some countries in the world that don't have the kind of statistics that you can point to here in Greece, in order to get to that point is going to have to take A, recognition, and then B, serious investment from serious people who recognize that the need is there and that we must take action, and again, with a real sense of urgency.
Thank you. Ambassador Hill.
Well, first of all, I just second everything that has already been said. I don't have a lot to add in that regard. I would like to say that with respect to Serbia's electricity production, we're talking about 3% as from renewables. So there's a tremendous opportunity there. As I mentioned, we have a new solar plant going in, which will contribute some. A lot of wind projects. But I guess the question is, I think there's a lot of opportunities for the business community in the renewables business. And I think the issue is, does the government have the right regulatory framework? Are they able to accept these things? Are they able to push with pilot projects? And the answer is, we find a government very, very interested in doing this. You know, as you know, Serbia has probably Europe's biggest and maybe best lithium reserves. And this has been quite a political issue in Serbia, enormous, and it's mixed up with everything. Shocking to think about this. It's been mixed up with politics as well. But I think it's going to be a situation where ultimately I think it will prevail, and I think it'll help in Europe's green economy. And another thing, we've learned a lot of bitter lessons from Ukraine and earlier from COVID, but we've learned that it's best to have your raw materials as close to you as possible, and we see this too. Serbia is also producing an electric car as we speak. It's a Stellantis electric car, but right now that car, you'd have to describe it as running on lithium, on coal, because that's 60% of the electricity production is lithium. So it doesn't really do much good to have an electric car unless you have the green infrastructure to go with it. In terms of what we do in the U.S., and I do thank AID, because AID has done a lot of good work on this, especially in the issue of pilot projects. I mean, you go out to some secondary city in Serbia, I was out in a place called Čačak, and you're basically have a project where you're putting in insulating. Now, insulating is a technology that's hardly new. But what you can do is you can show what happens to your heating costs when you use that. And then AID has also been behind a project to create a district heating and cooling plant using biomass. So the technologies are getting there. The regulatory framework is getting there. I think regulatory framework is probably the most important thing at this point. And I think we should, people have a right to get out in the streets and protest lithium or whatever they want, but we need to embrace the fact that we need to take action, and we need to look for not only more renewables, but things that make sense and things that will be acceptable to the public. And I'm pleased to say our technology, our assistance, our whole body language to the Serbs is show some audacity on this, go forward on this, because there's no going back on this issue. We all have to do what we need to do.
Nikola Tesla was Serbian, so we all expect more from...
Tesla is a name brand now, but you're right. In Serbia, it's usually a statue of a gentleman thinking very hard. Yeah.
Ambassador Fisher, please.
Thanks very much. When thinking about renewables and thinking about Cyprus, right, it is a place that is really blessed with so many incredible natural resources that can contribute to renewable energy. I think I heard you say, George, that you don't have enough sunshine in Greece, but we do in Cyprus. And look, there's an incredible community of investors, of businesses in green energy in Cyprus. And I think, if Cyprus is going to make that turn, they're going to make that turn away from how they have been producing energy, which is one of the most polluting forms of energy production, the burning of mazout. What we really need to see in Cyprus, and what we would like to help be a partner on, is the kind of leadership that is going to help bring some of these projects across the line, like the Great Sea Interconnector, like advancing the technology around storage for the renewables, because, right, that's going to be a key part of this. Doing more to enable the green energy transition in Cyprus is absolutely critical. It is not such a large piece of the European project, but Cyprus has the opportunity to really show some leadership in this way. And again, whether it's wind, whether it's sea, whether it's solar, there is an abundance of renewable opportunities in Cyprus that are ready to be seized. And so we're hoping to see some of these projects advance.
Thank you. Ms. Devitt?
Yes, thank you. So the U.S. government has contributed to the efforts to reduce net zero emissions in Kosovo in a number of ways. I mean, for years, USAID has long supported Kosovo to adopt EU-aligned energy sector policies and regulations, creating an open, transparent, and climate-friendly business environment. A good example of the U.S. government's assistance through USAID was Kosovo's success in awarding the first solar auction contract for a 100-megawatt solar facility. The success of this auction demonstrates that Kosovo presents real opportunities for international developers and investors to invest in Kosovo's energy sector. It was followed by the signing of an agreement for an inaugural 150-megawatt wind auction involving the Ministry of Economy, represented by Minister Rizvanoli, and International Finance Corporation, with significant support from USAID, the Embassy, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, in March of this year. So USAID is working across all government agencies to achieve the efforts of Western Balkans countries, but Kosovo in particular, in achieving 35% of its power from renewable sources by 2030.
Thank you. I think we all agree that the countries that you represent and the countries in Southeastern Europe are at different levels of renewables, as Ambassador Tuna said. But I think there are opportunities for companies perhaps to spearhead cooperation between the different countries through investment. I think Ambassador Hill touched upon it earlier when he was mentioning things that were happening in the US and could be replicated in our part of the world. So for the last question that I have, I'd like to ask you, are there any lessons that the US can give Europe on the ongoing energy transition based on your experience? Ambassador Tunis?
We're not an island, and we shouldn't. I'm going to deviate a little bit. I want to thank my friends. We're all friends. Ambassador Hill is a 5-time ambassador, was very instrumental in the Dayton Accords. And we went to diplomatic training school together, and he's a mentor and a brother. Ambassador Aguilar has said that we have fought and we will continue to fight for an interconnector to North Macedonia because it will help the people of North Macedonia. And that is the work that we're supposed to do. Ambassador Fisher, we went to Anavisi together. Need I say more? Need I say more? But I want to thank USAID, and I'm going to tell you why I'm proud of my country, because I don't think we talk about it enough. People ask, and what has the United States done for anyone else? USAID is a $29 billion agency. The taxpayers of the United States fund $29 billion a year to help people. So how is that impactful? The Moldovan energy minister is here today. The average person in Moldova, 90% of their paycheck goes to their electricity bill. USAID provides hundreds of millions of dollars a year to subsidize those so people can put food on the table. We work closely. I mean, we have here the TSO, CSOs, transmission service operators, and the energy ministers. Greece, my great friend from Bulgaria, who in October of 2022, we got together, we saw the Greek government together because Russia shut off the spigot in Bulgaria, and Prime Minister Mitsotakis provided slots in Evithusa and provided 35% of the energy to make sure Bulgaria got through the winter and didn't freeze to death, as was Russia's intentions. We worked together, and there are so many ways where Bulgaria helps Greece, and we all help Ukraine get through this, and Moldova. Romania was absolutely essential in helping Moldova set up its own energy trading entity, which is important today. So the lesson is we need to work together. We need to cooperate. If you look at the vertical corridor, which is essential in making sure that peoples get an energy source that is secure, as well as decarbonizing. Greece has capabilities, so does Bulgaria, so does Romania, etc. Ukraine has tremendous storage that's necessary. So as we move forward, we have to make sure that we never put ourselves in a position where we sole source energy to a country that uses it in a manner to exploit people, in an extortive manner, as a geostrategic tool, that we have our own independent and reliable energy sources, that we move towards decarbonization in an intelligent way as quickly as possible. Folks, we have some serious challenges here. The minister will tell you the coal mines that are in Bulgaria, and they're very, very significant, as we're transitioning away from coal in Bulgaria, there are massive holes in the ground that are going to have to be dealt with because they're an environmental hazard. We're going to have to deal with that because it's not just Bulgaria's problem or Kozani's problem or Eastern Kentucky's problem or West Virginia's problem. We are interconnected in this world, and challenges that exist affect all of us. So what I would like to say, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, is I am 4.5 months from going home. We need to drown out those that want to divide us, messages of hatred and division, and talk about things in terms of unity and kindness, interconnection, working together, helping each other, making sure that we all have opportunities. Kindness and love and decency and standing up for each other, because we are interconnected. And we have some very challenging times ahead of us because we have some very, very hateful rhetoric. I'm incredibly proud to have lived in Greece these last 2.5 years because I was blessed to be able to be the U.S. ambassador in a country that operates on principles and values. And that's what I want from all of us. Those of us that are here are blessed. We have had opportunities. We've had opportunities to grow up in a country that does not have community violence, that has safety. We're able to get great educations and be able to become the best versions of ourselves, to climb the ladders of success. But there's 117 million displaced persons in this world. They're not coming to destroy our society and take our jobs and all of that nonsense, yet we demonize them. I am the child of 2 immigrants. I married a woman who's a child of 2 immigrants. I was born in, my father was a waiter. My dad was an orphan. My parents knew war, they knew poverty, they knew starvation. Yet they were able to come to the United States and be accepted and have opportunity. Shouldn't every child have that opportunity? Do we not have to care about the children that are coming from the Sahel and Somalia and other places that are fleeing war and community violence and poverty? In Europe and the United States, we have challenging demographics. In Greece, we have a shortage of everything: tourism workers, There's 160,000 less construction workers in Greece than there was in 2007. And we're misunderstood when it comes to migration patterns. 80% of the people that wash up on the shores in Greece have skills that can immediately get to work and be productive. So don't we approach this issue with, let's intelligently incorporate them into society, get them a job, a place to live, put their kids in school, let them practice their own religion and their own culture, but also learn English and Greek and give them an education. And I will tell you firsthand, families of immigrants are grateful and entrepreneurial. They've built the United States. It's the single greatest economic experiment in the history of the world. Isn't this our ethos? We speak about philotimo, but let's make sure that we practice it. And everything that I have just said is not only the right thing to do for someone who got into an inflatable, has her 2-year-old on her shoulder, her 4-year-old in her hand, risking their lives to come to a place of freedom and opportunity. But giving everyone that opportunity is not only benefits those that are seeking to come to Europe, but it's the right thing to do for Europe. We need to start thinking of things with the brain of a banker but a heart of a social worker. Everything that I have said is in Europe's best interest, is in the United States' best interest. And we need to start understanding that we are completely interconnected. This is a world of 8.5 billion people. There are 10 million people that are displaced in Somalia. There are 9 million refugees in Egypt. We need to get ahead of this and understand there's some challenges, and we need a new thinking about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Aguilar.
It's not really fair to have to follow that. But I want to thank my friend, George Sunis, for that very impassioned and very eloquent testimony, essentially. And I couldn't agree with him more. I'm not a good one to ask about the American model. I'm the daughter of a diplomat. I'm a diplomat. I've spent the majority of my life outside of my own country. And the lessons that I have taken echo, first of all, many of those that Ambassador Tsunis has shared. But they've also brought two other critically to me important lessons about the United States. And the first is the charitable nature of Americans. We are the most charitable citizens in the world, personally, privately, beyond what comes out of taxpayer dollars. Because there is a sense that we take care of our neighbors, and that goes beyond politics, as it should. But the other balancing act, and I love George's reference of having the mind of a baker and the heart of a social worker, is entrepreneurship. And the two of those, I think, critically go hand in hand. Because, and you all here today are perfect examples of that, that we attack these challenges before us that we all face, whether it's climate change, whether it's energy security and independence, whether it's green energy, by having people like you, businesses that are willing to look at new solutions, to think creatively about those challenges, not to accept the status quo and to say we have to get together, think about it, do this differently, and then make the investment that's going to make that happen. So I thank you all for embodying that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador Hill.
Well, thank you very much. And now those are two speeches that I really cannot follow with with a matching amount of grace and compassion. But except to say, George, you've learned a lot since our ambassador seminar. I mean, you know, we were working on which fork to pick up for the salad course, and and instead you've understood the essence of our country. But I suspect that happened a long, long time ago. But thank you, George, for all you've said, and maybe more importantly, for all you've done in this country, because I think you have brought Greece and America much closer together. So thank you for that. You know, I guess the original question, does anyone recall the original question? But I think it had to do,
I think they want oatmeal raisin cookie recipes. I think that was it.
I think it had to do with how do we share our experience with the world, and certainly, as the spirit of these two answers suggests, we have a very open heart. I must say, in Belgrade, if I have a Greek business person wanting to see me, the first thing I say is not go see the Greek embassy. I listen to what the person has to say and see whether there's something we can do together. I feel very strongly about working with like-minded people. And as George said in his talk, I think this issue of climate change affects us all. It doesn't stop at any borders, as some of these wildfires have attested. So I think if we can work together on them, first of all, it's always good to work together, and secondly, maybe we can come up with more answers. I've mentioned a couple of things we've been doing in Serbia in terms of some of the technologies. And by the way, it's not just technologies. Technologies don't necessarily happen in government. What it is dealing with regulation, dealing with a regulatory experience, and realizing that we'll have issues that impede new players in the market, and by definition, you're going to have new players in the market to deal with some of these new problems and new technologies. So I think what AID has been successful in doing is, first of all, taking a look at each country's how they are organized for expanding the scope for energy saving, and then to try to make some suggestions. And by the way, I emphasize, it never helps when an American comes and says, do this. It helps when someone says, what do you think we should do? And then you can say whatever you want, but you have to wait for the question before you start lecturing on the answer. But I think in Serbia's case, we've had our problems with Serbia over the years, to be sure, but we got no problem now in terms of them coming up to us and saying, can you help in these issues? I mean, this pump storage idea is rather dramatic. I mean, you're taking water from a river, you're pumping it up to some river in the middle of the mountains, and you're bringing it down at certain times in order to expand the energy supply. So we're doing that, and I think on solar we do a lot, but other countries do a lot on solar as well. And again, I think we're going to need all hands on deck to resolve these issues. But I just want to let you all know that our door in the American Embassy in Belgrade is open. We love working with Greek business people. One of the reasons is you have a pretty good relationship with the Serbs. I mean, it goes back, but more importantly, it's just a good business relationship. You know how to deal with them when they're in your country, and you know how they deal with you when you're in their country. I mean, it's pretty good and pretty positive, and anything we can do to help, we would love to help.
Thank you, Ambassador Hill. Ambassador Fisher?
So if I remember the original question, it was
Lessons
teaching lessons to Europe, and I have 2 tours in Brussels, and what I learned in those 2 tours is Europe doesn't want lessons from the United States of America in general. And I think, what I also have learned out of 2 tours in Brussels is that the incredibly hard work that we do every single day, from like the junior diplomat level, the junior military officer at SHAPE, to the ambassadorial level, to leaders in G7 or at NATO, right? Like the hard work that is all of that represents, where we come together and we build consensus on problem solving, where we share ideas, where we find a way to agree. This is where our power lies, is in building together. And, for the United States of America, partnership with our allies, partnership with our friends and like-minded countries, this has been what we have been doing for decades, and that's not changing, right? And so our adversaries think this is our weakness, that we're slow, that it takes time, that you have to wait for meetings in Brussels or in Washington or for the G7 to convene, but they're wrong, because that is fundamentally the source of our strength. And so I think, the key is not for either side of the Atlantic to be lecturing the other, but to thinking about how we do more together to solve problems big and small.
Thank you. Ms. Devitt?
I just wanted to say thank you for the recognition of the work that USAID has accomplished. However, we all know that could not be done without a whole of government approach. And that is something that I'm proud of, so thank you for that. Just to say, we've long, USAID, US government through USAID has long supported Kosovo and other countries in the region to align their energy sector policies and regulations in accordance with EU norms to better integrate these small markets into the EU energy market. And we will continue to do that and make attractive to international investors, private sector, and local entities the opportunity to invest in the clean energy transition and provide support to all citizens, including the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have time for more questions. I think also that it's obvious that there are challenges that all our countries are facing, and that they are not only related to energy nor climate change. There are a multitude of challenges, and I think it's also obvious that what Ambassador Fisher said, I think what all of you said, that through collaboration, through partnership, I think we will be able to solve them to the extent that we can much better. This was a star panel. I said that at the beginning. I sincerely thank you for taking the time to participate in our panel, and I thank you for the great work that you do for the US in the countries that you represent. Thank you so much.